Hey everyone, welcome to the live edition of the Other Side of Addiction podcast. Guys, we got a really good show for you today. We have some gentlemen here with White Tree Medical, and I met with these guys, I don't know, probably about a month and a half ago. I went in there just to sit down, introduce myself, learn a little bit more about White Tree Medical. I ended up staying there for about 2.5 hours. I was really intrigued with what these guys do. So just to give you guys a little heads up of what they do, and I'll let them explain. So White Tree basically is an outpatient clinic, and they have an 84% success rate in the first treatment. And they have really affordable prices. Now, a lot of you who've been in recovery, are in recovery, or in long-term recovery, you know the issues that you can run into, right, when you get out of recovery. These guys are a great place to contact, learn a little bit more about them here on this show. And I think you guys will be intrigued just like I was intrigued. So, guys, I'd like to introduce you. Instead of me introducing you, how about you guys introduce yourself? Who wants to start first?
Start.
All right.
Neil Canfield, I'm the director here. I was one of the founding people here, and I've been here for 7-8 years. We've been doing this, and just part of everything that it turned into. And now I get to talk to great people like you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. All right. Well, who wants to go next? Yeah.
So I'm Rob Hicks, CMHC, which is just a fancy way of saying I'm a licensed therapist. I work here as the clinical director. I do a lot of direct counseling, brief counseling stuff, case management, and crisis work. So I basically do the face-to-face on clients on the practical problems and a lot of the challenges that come along with addiction.
Cool. Thank you, Rob. I know this guy, but I'll let him introduce himself.
Oh, there we go.
Chris Wright, been here a few months now. Very grateful to be here, Al. Thanks so much. I do community liaison work for White Tree now, just helping getting the knowledge out there that a place like this exists and helping people get better.
Yeah.
I love it. You know, one thing that intrigued me about you guys are there for the people. And there are some good recovery centers out there, because there are some that we definitely recommend. And it's because they're there for the people, right? They're there to help them find themselves, get well. There's places out there that are there for other reasons, and those are ones that I definitely won't promote. However, again, guys, I mean, probably within about a half hour of our meeting, I'm like, oh my gosh, these guys, this is what they really care about. They care about the individuals that walk in that door. And so many places around the valley, around the United States, probably around the world, that when you walk in, all they're seeing is another number. You guys don't see another number. So this question is for CL. What got you guys to do what you're doing? I mean, what intrigued you to do this?
So at the beginning of time, right, when we started this whole journey.
Okay, we only have an hour.
Right, there we go. So it's actually the two founding people that started it were me and my dad. And at the time, we worked with a lot of high acuity inpatient work. He's a doctor, and I did marketing and sales, did medical marketing, medical sales and things. And basically, we were turned on to the fact that Medicaid and Medicare didn't have an option to refer people to when they left the psych hospital. And the administrators we knew, the people we worked with, basically came to my dad and said, hey, we start a clinic that will follow up with Medicaid and Medicare patients, because this was, 8 years ago when there weren't as many options. And there's, hardly any more now, but at least one more now. So it's for Medicaid patients to have an option once they left an acute setting. And so we started it, and it turned into a couple years into that, we ended up getting the first outpatient detox license in the state of Utah, and we've had that for 5 years now. Just had our 5th audit a few months ago, and they were like, great, good job, guys. Yeah, it's the first outpatient medical detox program in the state. And it's the only one I'm aware of that takes Medicaid, so.
Now, and that's huge, right? Because there are quite a few people on Medicaid, and the options out there are very, very small.
Oh, yeah, and when you're looking at getting admitted for, it's complex even getting admitted to an inpatient detox hospital. A lot of times people are disqualified just because they don't meet qualifications for Medicaid to take care of that for them. Yeah, for us, I mean, after we got Medicaid worked out, we've worked with 100 other insurances now that we're contracted with to work with. And it's just, the whole point was to get it accessible financially and physically for people to be able to just come in and when they're in crisis saying, I'm in withdrawal, what do I do? You know, I don't want to use and I'm in withdrawal and I feel like I have no options. That's what we wanted to be. And I wanted to be able to answer that question for them and help them through to their next part of their life. And yeah, sorry.
No, you're right. Well, and kind of jump on what he's talking about. I actually met Dr. Canfield when he was working with the psychiatric hospitals that CL is talking about. And there's a big gap in service there where opioid detox is obviously like heroin and opiate pills is very difficult to go through, but insurance won't declare it as medically necessary. They won't declare it as medically threatening. And because of that, a lot of the hospital programs that do detox will try to basically play hot potato with these cases and push people from one situation to another, trying to avoid taking those cases because the insurance won't cover it, so the hospital won't get paid for it. On the other hand, Dr. Canfield had enough experience working with the detox programs in inpatient psychiatric hospitals that he wrote a program that can be executed on an outpatient basis instead of inpatient, that makes it a lot more comfortable and a lot safer. And so it doesn't have to be medically critical for insurance to be able to pay for it that way. And,
yeah, and the whole purpose of the licensure was to be able to say, Medicaid, we want to meet Medicaid requirements to not require per authorization, to be able to admit people from the moment they walk in and be able to help them. And when we went in and presented this idea to them, their response was, of course we want to work with you. No one's ever asked us how to do this before. No one's ever wanted to work with us like this before. And we said, well, we do. And so then it's been awesome. I mean, everyone there just cares about those patients and wants to help them. And we figured out a way to make a full medically supported situation for people on an outpatient basis that doesn't require per authorization from Medicaid for it to work. And so I listened to a few of your shows. I know that you have talked about this situation before of people getting access to care.
Yeah.
And wanted to solve that problem. You know, that was the first thing to walk into, because Medicaid people don't have an option. They just have what they have. And so they need some options created for them. And that's what we tried to do. And looking at our care and what it grew into from just wanting to follow up with people and make sure they were supported after they left a hospital situation. And it turned into, they don't even have an option to get the help they need to get off of the substances that are putting them in the life and death situations that knock them into the hospital. You know, you don't qualify for care until you're basically in a life and death situation.
Yeah.
And how do we prevent the loss of life, and how do we prevent that situation from getting worse? And that's exactly how we worked it out. And Medicaid was a great supporter of that.
I'm shocked that no one has ever thought of this. Well, okay, let me rephrase that. Maybe I'm not so shocked because the system is broken and they want to keep it broken.
well, and on the medical side of things, a lot of times it comes down to a combination of safety and liability.
Exactly.
That
Okay.
there is a significant danger to doing a rapid detox, to doing a rapid withdrawal process, especially with especially with alcohol and benzodiazepines. Opiates are still very uncomfortable and they can be dangerous, but it's a lot less dangerous than the other two. And so the hospital process, they look at it as, okay, how do we get people through this as fast as we can so we can get them out the door so they're not taking up our bed space. And the liability of doing that is high because there is a mortality rate to withdrawal. Like it's not common knowledge because most people don't experience it immediately, but when you work at the hospitals, you sure see it.
Yeah.
And because of that, doing an outpatient detox requires a tact and a strategy that is not common. And many doctors don't want to do that outpatient because they see it as high liability.
Well, it comes down to, this is another part of accessibility. It comes down to, these people are 6-7 days a week.
Yeah.
You know, these people need help every day.
Yeah.
And people don't want to have to deal with that acuity on an outpatient basis, and they don't want to have to staff a clinic to make sure that it works 7 days a week.
And Dr. Cancel's expertise put it in a position where we could do that.
Exactly.
Where we could design a taper that was both safe and comfortable.
Mhm.
And do it effectively in a way that acknowledges both the risk and the liability, because we have a perfect record when it comes to mortality rates. We have had no major medical problems with our clients going through this.
Knock on wood.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And because of that, we're very comfortable taking even pretty serious cases.
Yeah.
Knowing that we can do the same job the inpatient folks are doing, but we can do it in a way that's gonna be effective. And a lot of outpatient facilities and docs can't pull together the 24/7 staff that the hospitals do. And they don't wanna take on the liability to do it, especially in a situation where insurance doesn't really wanna take it. So it takes a combination of people who wanna do it because it's good for the client, are willing to work with Medicaid to make that happen, are willing to do the 7-day-a-week staffing to make it happen, and are willing to take on the risk of doing the high liability cases that way. And honestly, that's a niche that we've been able to hit pretty effectively. So that combination of things is what makes, and a lot of it that makes our detox program work.
Let me introduce Rob a little bit more than he introduced himself.
Okay. All right.
Rob's been in this field for 20 years. I mean, he's written multiple programs. He's worked at every, big rehab center in the state, pretty much. That's, a good place to work per se. I mean, he used to work at Odyssey. Yeah, he used to work, he's worked Uni, and he's worked in multiple hospitals. With the combination of my father, who's the medical director, dual boarded in addictionology, and Rob's experience on the clinical end, we're able to take people and really get them triaged correctly and get them the help they need in an effective, timely manner. It's just practical help. It
Yeah.
just comes down to practical solutions and things that just give people what they need when they need it.
It's practical, and to me it's humane, right? Because so many of us, and I'm just going to say I'm guilty of this. Okay, I definitely am guilty of this. So many of us look at addicts and alcoholics as just, they're trash, right? They're not individuals, and that's BS. And it took me watching my wife go through her addiction, and now also putting myself in the addiction community, where my eyes started opening up, and I mean opening up really, really wide. These are individuals that have family people that love them to death, that care for them. And yeah, they've burned a lot of bridges. That's not them. That's the addiction, right? That's not the individual. Because I've even said many times, my wife is not my wife. I don't even know who this person is. She was still in there. She was just in there really, really deep, right? And I got a question for Chris over here. Chris, you had your own business, and you left your business to work with White Tree. I mean, that's a huge step. And also, man, that's like rolling the dice. Did you hit snake eyes?
This is a really good guy.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that will disagree with that, but I'm hoping to change that over the next 6 years. Yeah, it's because it means a lot to me, and I went through the program. I'm walking proof of it.
Yeah.
I could have went to a hospital and suffered for 7 days and got a bow stuck on my head and said, "Congratulations, good luck." But I didn't. I was, by the grace of God, I found this place, and they took care of me, and they made me feel important.
You're a good guy.
Sorry.
No, don't be sorry.
I want to be a part of this as long as I can. And I just, like you said, I just want to help people. If I can advocate for people and show them that they can get here and feel this way, without having to stretch for that dopamine spike, that's what I want. These
Right.
guys are amazing at what they do. Amazing.
Let me tell you about Chris and how we got to know each other. So we went through and he said, I want to work with you. And I said, okay, Pink Cloud, maybe we'll talk about this later. You know, we'll take a minute. And literally at least 3 times a month, he would come here and find me and say, I want to work with you. And I'd say, look, man, take care of yourself. That's who I care about, right? That's who I wanted to take care of. Was Chris. I was like, hey man, because everybody that works in rehabs and everybody, they know about the Pink Cloud, and we don't want to compromise people and want to just concentrate on their care. And it took literally 9 months of that. And about, I don't know, 4 or 5 months in, Chris just said, screw you, dude, I'm just gonna bring people here. And you can just pay me when you feel like it.
I didn't even want to get paid, I don't care.
Yeah. You forget you, man. I'm just gonna bring people and I'm gonna get them help. And this is what I want to do. And
But it's like we talked about on my show. They also let me know the parameters we needed to be, you know, I couldn't be seen here anymore.
Yeah.
You know, they go about everything they do in such an honest way to make sure that we're abiding by everything. And I was okay with it. I said, fine, I just won't be seen here anymore, you know, but
Yeah.
in reality, I see them every day.
he wasn't a patient for 6 of those 9 months.
So I can come, right?
And every time you come in, I'll be like, let's make sure you're okay. Let's take care of you.
You know, I got to say this though, probably in that 6 months, Robin Seal, you was helping this guy, right? Because I mean, so many people that I've interviewed who a lot of them now work in the recovery arena. They say that is their new high, right? That is their new dopamine hit. That is their new, and they say it actually helps them more than they're probably helping the individual, right? It's because it's like my good friend Dave DeRocher says, he spent a lot of years destroying people's lives and making a muck of the community. And he has sworn the rest of his life, he's going to do the opposite. He's going to change people's lives. And that's exactly what you guys are doing. You guys have figured out a way, a legal way, a legit way, a way that shows care and love for individuals to help them. And it's not bring as many bodies in the door as you can so you guys can watch your bank accounts grow. Yes, you're doing this for a living, of course. Your biggest thing is let's watch our percentage of success grow, not the bank account. It's the success of the individuals that walk in the flipping door. That's what means the most to you guys. And I felt that within a short period of time, sitting down and having a meeting with you. You know, I'm like, oh my gosh, these guys, because I don't know if you remember, I'm like, how come people don't know about you? Right? I asked that question, I think twice. How come no one knows about you guys?
We're
on it.
well, for a long time, what we were doing was viewed as kind of experimental, right? No one had ever
Okay.
done this before. We wanted to make sure that we knew the process, that we knew what we were doing. Because we thought we knew what we were doing, but putting that into practical use is a little bit, you know, let's make sure that it's going to work for people. And it's just been great. It's just been great. I mean, we were just talking, Rob and I were talking to Chris about some patients, some pretty high acuity patients that we just really seen great successes with. I mean, Rob, you're talking about that.
Yeah. We have part of speaking to what you're talking about is we are primarily a Medicaid clinic. And you talk about volume versus getting paid for things. The nature of this field can be pretty predatory, where you have a day rate for a residential facility, or even more so for a hospital. It's very lucrative. And if you watch the market, you watch places pop up here and there are people that figure out how lucrative residential treatment can be, and then they pop up in these facilities. And if they work, they stick around. If they don't, they're gone in 6 months, usually with their license getting pulled for irresponsible behavior. On the other hand, working the opposite end, working with Medicaid, means we have to be willing to work on a different frame of mind. You have to be willing to put the needs of the client first. And Medicaid still does pay their bills. We still obviously are a business and we're doing work that way. But the primary goal is making this accessible. And the interesting thing is, you asked the question of well, I'll go to CL's response first. But CL was mentioning these high acuity cases, folks who are in a position where they need to use Medicaid are often very normal people who've hit hard situations. And there's also situations where people have lost a lot of functionality, either through acute addiction or very acute mental health concerns, psychosis, homelessness, a lot of these major problems that happen with people, even really great people. And when you work primarily with Medicaid, when you work primarily with those populations, you have to be prepared to work with some pretty grim situations. And what we found is that with consistent support over time, a lot of those cases can get better. Like there's a lot of those cases that we see massive improvement in. And in some cases, some of those higher acuity cases actually receive some of the best work because we see people make vast leaps in their functionality just by sticking with them, staying positive, working with the problems, working with the ups and the downs, and helping address medical and practical concerns as they go through this and they find their own recovery and their own success.
Yeah, the long-term help we give people is key to what we do.
Yeah.
It's, you know, what do you do when you get in a car wreck? What do you do when your dad dies? What do you do when you lost your 5th job in a month? What do you do when your marriage is breaking up or your kids don't want to see you anymore? And now the emotions are hitting you about that. What do you do if the whole reason you ended up on having a problem with addiction anyway was that you had an injury and you ended up, you know, going through all, you know, pain clinic or whatever, getting prescribed whatever, and then realized it was problematic to your life. And the only answer was go to a methadone clinic, or I don't know, go find someone to help you, or go to rehab.
Yeah.
And that's your only option. But then these are people that they're not engaged, that they're not dealing drugs, they don't have a legal history, and they have no idea how any of that part of the recovery system works. You know, they don't know how to change their lives that way. How does someone who just needs help because they were a construction worker for 20 years, now they hurt. And when you know you have a problem with opioids and you know you have pain, what's your long-term solution for that? That's where we accept. It is the initial phase of handling those high crisis situations, and the long-term making sure that you have those chronic conditions addressed adequately so that going to the dentist doesn't prompt a relapse, you know?
And it's a combination of the medical care that Dr. Canfield does well. He's got a lot of experience with working geriatric and pain management and a lot of experience working in the psychiatric hospitals. So we can address on a medical side of things, pain issues without narcotics. There are options. There are things that you can do to address those issues without jumping straight to big gun narcotics. We can address a lot of the mental health concerns that people deal with. You know, coming from working in the psychiatric hospitals, which is where I met Dr. Campbell in the first place. The vast majority of people that come out of psychiatric hospitals, I'm stealing one of his talking points. The vast majority of people that come out of psychiatric hospitals need some kind of mental health care, whether that's an antidepressant or an anti-anxiety or something just to deal with chronic low-level pain. Most people that have lived that lifestyle have things that need medical care. And matching that together with regular visits with a counselor or somebody who can do the crisis work. So yeah, like CL says, if somebody has a death in the family, their options are relapse or come get help. And they see us every month for mental health medications anyway, so they know they can come in and get help. Or if they have a relapse, if they do go that route, they come in and get help, and we get them back on track before it's a long-term crisis.
Yeah, we're here.
And I want to make sure to that point too, we see them within 24 hours when they're in crisis. They want to see them.
The 7-day-a-week schedule is critical.
Very critical.
Well, I mean, I'm gonna quote you from your visit with Al a week ago, but we saw you on December 26th.
Yes.
Yes. Like after that whole thing went down.
Yep.
You know, that's our protocol. That's what we do here, you know, is we just take care of you the moment when you're in the midst of your crisis is when we want to see you.
And where that's different, so go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, see, that's where this is different, right? Because what happens, and I've seen this happen, and I've heard some of our guests say, and I watched it happen with my wife. What happens if you mess up in recovery? I mean, basically, you get the boot.
Yeah,
right? You get the boot. Now there are some recoveries where that, like TOSA or Red Barn, it's a 2 year or 2.5 year commitment. And if you
Right.
walk out, you walk out, right? That's your
I
call.
met those barn guys. They're good. They're cool.
Yeah, they're really, really good. However, to be able 24 hours later that they know they can still call you guys for help because you guys understand, right? I mean, you understand. It could, I mean,
Things change very, very rapidly.
they do. And we're all different, right? We all handle things differently. So some of our listeners can say, oh, well, crap, this is how I handled death in my family and I did fine. Well, that's you, right? So
Right.
it's like me it took me a long time. I have a really high tolerance with pain. I can go through a ton of pain for a long period of time to where I'm finally going, okay,
That's your body.
there's definitely something wrong. I got to do something, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I know other people that, I mean, they get a sliver and I mean, the pain is so bad, or they have sore muscles and the pain is so bad, they won't even show up to work.
Right.
Right. But that's who they are. We're all different. We're all built differently. So I want our listeners to understand a lot of people that come through White Tree's door, they're handling things a little bit different. It's just because who they are. It doesn't make them weak. It doesn't make them a baby, and again, it's that stigma thing. I want people to understand they're different. They're built differently. All of us are. Some of us can handle some things that others cannot, and vice versa.
Exactly. When we looked at starting this, we needed to take, it wasn't 1 out of 10 cases that were going to be high acuity when you start working with the Medicaid population. It's at least half of them, if not more. So you need to be ready to deal with multiple high acuity cases in a row and be able to take care of them adequately and safely and make sure all their needs are met. When you're looking at just how the state has licensure structured, everyone hands in their policies and procedures. It's this, 25 to 100 page document you submit with your licensure to get licensed in the state to be a behavioral program, to be able to treat people at all. Every single one I saw has a place in it where this is when we kick people out. Formalized of this is when you're done, and especially for behavioral programs, they have a behavioral structure that they're trying to help people do. And when they're not meeting the requirement for that, they have to kick them out because they're violating their licensure for treating them further, right? How we wrote our policies was if you have a medical need in addiction.
Did we lose you? Oh,
No, I'm there. I just hit the wrong button.
If you have a medical need and in addiction, you qualify for care here. We don't ever have to say no unless you're like beating up Rob or stealing Chris's wallet, like that. Like that's the kind of stuff that we're like, hey man, we have to call the cops or you have to go away. Like outside of that extreme type of behavior, there's no reason for us to ever not want to see you. And the liability that comes with that and the understanding on the medical side of what comes with that is what really sets us apart. It's our expertise. It's what we do. And that's what we wanted to do, is be able to fill that gap for people where multiple times, Rob and I have talked about it. Patients come in and they're like, what am I, I got kicked out of rehab and what do I do? That's where we fit in. Because we're like, well, why'd you get out of rehab? If you change your behavior, would they let you go back? Let's help you do that. Let's talk through it and let's help you get ready to be able to start addressing some of that stuff. I mean,
well, I don't want to throw the treatment community under the bus with this outcome, because the reason why they do that specifically is cross-contamination. The term is milieu treatment. When you work with a group of people who are all struggling with similar problems and one of them has a relapse, if you don't remove that threat to the community, then that community toxifies really fast. We were talking about it earlier with sober living houses and how in sober living houses, a well-supervised sober living house will stay clean. One that doesn't, one person relapses and all of a sudden it goes through the house like wildfire. So that style of treatment has specific reasons why they have to hold hard lines. What we're doing in that is a support and a connection to that where we do individualized care. So we're not worried about cross-contamination. Like unless somebody's talking about stuff in our lobby, which doesn't really happen, people will stay to themselves for the most part.
Everyone's on their phones. No one's looking at it.
Unless somebody is actively engaging with other clients, we don't have to worry about that. So if somebody comes in right after they have a relapse, great. Like that's where we want them to come in. We want them to get the support. We want to get them back on track. We want to look at, okay, why? What happened? Oh, you went through this crisis and this crisis, and this crisis. Okay, first of all, let's address your crisis. Second, let's talk about what we can do different to structure your life in a way to reduce that risk of relapse in the future. And third, hey man, we're glad you're back. Let's get your normal meds taken care of and get you on track with a doc and make sure you're physically okay. And then let's talk about what you're going to do for the next couple of days to stay clean. And that approach gives people the opportunity to bounce back really fast. And in that case, if they can get back into a treatment community, let's get them on their feet and get them back in the game. Like, let's get them on their feet and back on track. And that approach specifically is far more effective than having to drop people just because they're having a current problem, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I'm picturing you guys are the cheerleaders right in the background, really. I mean, and you're also the coaches, right? Because you're there to assist. And you know, I know Chris knows this. Yeah, you know, when it comes time for recovery, right? We still need assistance, right? Because we know we cannot do it alone. And to have, even if you have 2 or 3 people behind you, that's so huge. I mean, that's a game changer for a lot of people to have that support.
And I say this to patients all the time. It's not a 7-year plan. You need a 7-minute plan. What are you going to do for the next 7 minutes to help you get to a clean space? You know, and if we're your option, if you know, oh, I'm going to get in my car and drive to White Tree, that's just fine. We're more than happy to help you.
Yeah.
And you know what? But when you come here, then we're going to say, hey, what other supports do you have? How do we structure this and help you take care of that?
There's a really interesting conversation there with supports, because for a lot of people that struggle with addiction, they've created some challenges, and a lot of them come from very challenging situations in the first place. And most people come into addiction for a reason, and it's very rarely, oh, I just like to party. It's people have gone through serious problems and serious difficulties, and they turn to addiction for pain relief or for emotional relief. And the social supports of getting people back on their feet are really, really critical. That's 60% of the conversations I have is, okay, who can you spend time with? Who can you have that's positive? But people that come into it from addiction have created some wreckage. They've created some problems. The addiction has created some problems. And honestly, a lot of times family doesn't necessarily understand.
Oh yeah.
I tell clients, I'm like, look, your family right now might be frustrated, but they're dealing with the last 3 to 6 months. And right now you're starting to do well. You cannot expect family to immediately jump on board because their experience has shown otherwise. So what we want to do is we want to help the clients get that 3 to 6 months stability with positive, healthy social supports, which includes us and includes other healthy social supports that we can try to talk to and get them connected with. But once they get 3 to 6 months clean time doing that, family comes back around. They want them to do well. Social supports want people to do well, but they need to see it. And if we can be a crutch for those 3 to 6 months, then a lot of times most people will come around and they'll get back on board.
And a lot of people have things that go longer. They have drug court, or they have DCFS.
Yeah.
So they have, you know, really practical things that they're like, man, if I could just show them a drug screen, cool, saying I'm clean, then that would just put me miles ahead with them in my working with them to further my situation here.
We write those letters every day.
That we do that every day.
Every day.
We had just
See, and that's huge, right, CL? I mean, the opposite of addiction is connection, right? And when you're able to connect with individuals like yourself, that is so huge. You know, and you know, Rob, you was talking about how, right, the family does distance themselves, you know, from it. And I was doing my best to be a cheerleader for my wife when she was starting her recovery journey again for the multiple time, right? However, this time it's been, you know, she's 30 plus months sober. And
awesome.
It's like I used to tell her, it's like, you don't become an addict overnight. you burn a lot of bridges. It's going to take time to build those bridges back up. However, if you continue to go down this right path, right, and you continue to work on yourself, you continue to work on what's going on inside here, the bridge will build itself, really. And we have both seen it happen, right? And it's just amazing. It's amazing to see. I mean, it's like both my wife and I, we've been together almost 18 years, and we are totally different people than who we were when we met, right? I mean, totally. And it's because of what I went through with my weekend cocaine and alcohol use, and then me coming out of it and working on myself, and then her going into her addiction. And we've both come out of it to be totally different people. And I just want to say thank you to the recovery community, because the support that's out there from so many individuals. And I just have to even say thank you for this show, because I get to meet individuals like yourself, right? And I get to find other resources, good resources that are out there to help other individuals. And every one of my guests, whether it's been on a live show or a recorded show, has helped shape me to be a better person in one way or another. And they have inspired me in one way or another. And I wouldn't trade that in. Am I where I'm at? Am I where I want to be in life right now, like financially and things? I mean, we're still kind of struggling. We're still going through certain things. However, we both know we're on this path for a reason.
Yeah.
And that reason is to meet individuals like yourself and so many others that we have built relationships with and build connection with, because I wouldn't trade it in for anything right now. It's like, it's just like I threw a 24-year career away because of cocaine and alcohol. However, I gained so much more. It took 14 something years, 12 years, because I've been doing this a little over 2 years. 12 years to get to that point. However, I needed to walk that journey first to get to where I'm at today. So, guys, I just want to say thank you. And I'm not saying thank you because the show's over. We still got another half hour or so, but I just want to say thank you. Yeah, for what you guys do. Oh, well, thanks. I
You're
appreciate
great.
it.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
and you want to see that kind of potential, like you talk about it a lot of times. I have this conversation with people who have no experience in addiction on a regular basis, where I'll talk to people about what I do for a living, because it's casual conversation. And people are like, "Oh, you work with junkies?" Or my mom over the weekend called my clients druggies, and I'm like, "Mom, if you had any idea how many of the people that that I've seen go through this kind of a program, like, you'd be shocked." And the truth is, you don't want to see somebody just for the problem. You want to see them for the solution. You want to see people for their progress and their capabilities and their potential. And when you shift that mindset away from just looking and judging for the problems, but looking at the potential, then yeah, people get better. People get better and people do amazing things. And a lot of times it's chemistry. It's stepping away from the chemical influence. And it's almost a cliche, but I'll try not to go too down the rabbit hole with this. But if you listen to music or you look at people with specific drug histories, you can see the personalities. You see the opiate rock star, you see the Scooby-Doo stoner, like you see those kinds of archetypes, if that makes sense, and you can read the personality. And when you work in this kind of a field for a long time, it's amazing how much of that personality is direct chemical influence, if that makes sense. It's direct chemical influence and long-term personality change. And the interesting thing is that most of those personality changes are very reversible over time. Not all of them, and some more than others. But if you get somebody off of the substance for long enough, you watch their personality shift and grow in a positive direction. And you watch people gain potential and positivity. And you see them leave behind a lot of those negative qualities that people associate with addiction and figure out their potential, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah. And I'd like to feed off of that, Rob, before CL jumps in real quick. That is 100% correct in how I see it. Okay. I was down at TOSA, the Other Side Academy, for an event, and I was talking to one of the guys that's been on the show, huge supporter. I love the guy. I mean, Dylan is just an amazing individual. I was over there talking to him after the event, And he says, Al, it is so flippin' cool to watch people discover themselves. And they discover that they have talents they didn't even realize that they had, right? They start realizing, I am an amazing individual. Oh my gosh, look what I can do. When they were so lost before, and it's not that they were just lost in the drugs and alcohol, they were lost in their trauma that caused the drugs and alcohol or gambling or sex or whatever to come into their life, that grabbed them really, really tight and hung on as long as it could. But to see the talent these individuals have is just, it blows me away, right? So yeah, someone, as they start getting clean, they start rediscovering themselves and start going, I am not this person I thought I was for years. I'm actually this person, and I love it.
And I've had this conversation with patients so many times. And, you know, because people get through and they're starting to be in a good place, and then they're starting to look back and look at negative things. They're starting to attempt things to fix their life. And I sit down and say, hey, hold on a second. You need to understand that if you weren't physically strong, emotionally capable, mentally powerful, you would have either broken or died by now. This addiction kills more people than almost anything in the history of the world, right? Like the top 10 causes of death for people ages 18 to 45 are all addiction related. Every single one of them is addiction. When it's, you know, accidents, suicide, overdoses, et cetera, all those things. This is the #1 killer and just, you know, destroyer of lives. And you survived this. And you made it to a place where you get to do this. Yeah, crappy things happened, or you came from a serious situation that was really negative. That would have influenced you so much more if you weren't just naturally gifted and talented and powerful as an individual. And not enough people talk about that. When you're looking at people that function as addicts, they're incredibly just wonderful. And they have so many great things about them. If they didn't just naturally have that, this would be hugely incapacitating, right?
Yeah.
You know, they'd be in active psychosis all the time. They'd be the homeless people wandering around the streets. They'd, you know, overdose or get in a car wreck or end up in prison. These are people that functioned because they're so talented. And when you don't look at what the #1 thing that I ran into trying to get this started, almost every advisor or person I turned to try to help us set this thing up said, don't take Medicaid. And I said, why? And they said, Medicaid doesn't pay anything, all the patients are super difficult, the liability is insane. And I just looked right at them and I said, you don't understand what we're trying to do here. Yeah.
Trying to solve
Medicaid clinic that don't take Medicaid. That doesn't work. That's not how this works. We want to help those people because those people are so great when they get through the other side of this stuff. And that's why we do this, is because a lot of times it's just consistent little things, you know. I always use the example, you know, 2 examples I use for this. If you get in a car wreck and you have a history as a heroin addict and you've been sober for 3 years and you wake up with a morphine drip in your arm, everyone did their job right. There's no one you can be mad at, and you're just left there. That's where you're at. Who's going to help you in that moment? What options do you have to go and talk to people? If you go to the ER and say, you gave me morphine and I'm a heroin addict and I don't know what to do, they'll be like, oh, well, go home and don't do heroin. I mean, like,
Yeah, right.
That's that, you know, like until your life's at risk, we can't get you admitted anywhere. We can't get you help. And for individual counseling and everything, I mean, you have to pay cash for that. And a lot of people, if they're on Medicaid or low income, they can't afford that. And so they're just left either choosing, okay, I either need to look like I'm gonna die, or I need to figure this out on my own. And we're trying to fill that need and fill that niche of how is it when people are doing everything right and life just happens? How do you get an answer for that? How do you get help there? Because these are great people. They're wonderful.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a great analogy, a great way of looking at it, a really good way of looking at it. And something that I want to bring up, you guys, let me see if I say this right. You guys have a therapist that also works there, right? Or a psychologist, which, right? I mean, it's you, Rob, for people to go to. Now, it is something that people can go to, and correct me if I'm wrong. It's not really a charged item, right? It's someone that they can go to. They can go to Rob and say, Rob, I'm struggling. You know, can you give me some help? What direction do I need to go? Is this correct?
Talk about case management.
Yeah, so we direct traffic is a lot of what we do in those situations. So first of all, when I first introduce myself, one of the biggest things that I do in this kind of environment is crisis work. And when we're talking about long-term progress and people doing well from weeks to weeks, months to months, that's fun to watch. Watching people rediscover themselves, watch people do well. We get to do the weekly check-in. But honestly, in most cases with those weekly check-ins, it's, hey, how you doing? How's your cat? Glad you're here. Like most people in that situation are stable until they're not. And in those moments of crisis, that's when we do a lot of our best work, because people coming in for the regular routine medical care, because they're going to go into the doc for normal routine care anyway. They come in and they check in, and then when they do have a crisis, they know they can come in and get that help. Now, I don't generally do like full weekly 1 hour sessions with people. It's not the standard model for therapy either. What I do is short-term crisis work and then helping people stabilize, and then providing options and directing traffic. So somebody comes in to me and says, hey, my grandmother just died. She raised me. This was a big deal. We do that conversation about once a week, maybe twice a week, depending on the situation, where somebody goes through a major crisis. And I use a death in the family because it's something that the vast majority of people can relate to. But there's similar things like a critical divorce or like a major car accident.
I was assaulted.
Or I was assaulted. We do
Yeah.
deal with sexual assault on way more than I'd like to. They know they can come in and we'll sit them down, we'll make sure they're okay. We'll talk them through it and we'll talk them through the choices. And, you know, I've done employee assistance counseling and I've done crisis work in the hospitals, and there's a lot of different kinds of work. So there's very few things that our clinic can't handle in terms of short-term crisis work. There's very few things that we can't work with, because that moment of doing that crisis stabilization becomes really important. We can get them calmed down. We take as much or as little time as we needed. It's not constrained to our sessions. I'm not going to look at my watch and say, oh, hey, we got 15 more minutes. No, we're dealing with the concrete problem they're dealing with. And then once we get folks stabilized, we start talking about options. We start talking about, okay, let's look at your insurance and let's look at your area and let's figure out which therapists are in your area that you can do more long-term work with, where you can do the weekly sessions. Or, hey man, your psychosis is a little bit more intense than usual. Let's talk to the doc about working with antipsychotics and talk about working with medications that are going to help, if that makes sense. And that's a much softer conversation I do. Talking about earlier. That's an example. When somebody's in crisis, we want to make sure they know where they're going next. And working directly with Dr. Canfield with these kinds of things allows us to tag team those critical problems and find short-term solutions, and more importantly, look toward long-term benefit. Because we're going to take notes and we're going to make recommendations, get them in contact when they need to go in. And then a month later, when they come back in, or a week later, if they're still in crisis, then we're going to say, okay, what happened? Where did you go? Where are you at? Are you still okay? Are you still not? What do we need to do to keep you moving forward?
Sure.
And to answer your question of how does that work? No, actually, the way our insurance is structured, it's not billed separately. We do not get paid. And the reason why we don't is because we didn't want to force the clients into paying 2 copays, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'm very lucky to be here because my work piggybacks onto what the doc does. And we do that as part of a service to make sure that people are taken care of, not because we make extra money off of it, if that makes sense. Which allows us the flexibility to say, hey, you're doing great, see you next time. You're doing awesome, good work, cheerleader, go, that's awesome. And when they're in crisis, okay, now we're serious, let's problem solve, let's figure this out. And that allows us to spend very efficient use of time on critical problems and also make sure that people are taken care of when they need it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Our system has a lot of resources out there that people don't necessarily know how to access. And having somebody that's worked with those different systems and knows how to navigate, victims advocates or the Valley Behavioral System or the Road Home or whatever resources people need to work with at any given point in time, we direct traffic and we follow up to make sure they go through with it. If that makes sense.
Well, and the reason why Rob is here is because that's what people need.
Yeah.
Oh,
This
yeah.
is what people need. When we started, it was just me and my dad being, oh, okay, there's no, we'll help the administrators we know out because they're getting pushback on their insurance contracting because they're having recidivism problems of people coming into their hospitals 6 to 10 times a year. So, and then their insurance contracts are coming back saying, hey, you're not doing a very good job, basically, and then causing them some problems. And so they needed a better referral solution when they left. And that's turned into, wow, these people really don't have options. Wow, this really isn't how it's working. We're going to get them that help. And we're going to help them to the best ability we can, and we're going to find someone like Rob to help them.
Well, and
And yeah,
comparing that to the traditional rehab community, which there's a lot of people out there that do great work in that community.
oh yeah,
But in most cases, due to the financial nature of that situation, they have to keep it short or the insurance folks get cranky. I'll give a really clear example. Odyssey House is one of the biggest providers in the state. They've done a lot of great work. When they were formed, they were like a 2-year program. Then they were a year program. When I worked there in like 2010, 2012, they averaged 6 months, if that makes sense. And then they went into working more and more with insurance and less with public money. And as they did that, their treatment course shortened and shortened and shortened. In that situation,
and that's not saying Odyssey House isn't treating people really
No.
well. They're one of the best programs in the state. I
yeah,
think.
they do a lot of really good work, and they're
That's
kind
just
of
outside pressures coming in and manipulating their care based off of non-care issues.
But the issue with that is when you shorten treatment more and more and more, people don't get the long-term follow-up. And those first 2 months are absolutely critical. And if we have a client in crisis and they can't stay clean on their own, if they can't go from appointment to appointment and continue to show a positive trajectory, then we absolutely will coordinate with those kinds of facilities and get people additional help if we need to. But then the long-term follow-up even after that has them a place to land afterwards so they can continue to get help. And because of the way that we're billing as a medical visit instead of an inpatient stay, then we can follow up with people over and over again over time. And we can get them the long-term support they need to back up that short-term crisis work, if that makes sense.
Because as you look at the longitudinal nature of care for a patient, a lot of behavioral problems are non-chronic, they're acute. Meaning, yeah, you need therapy to get through this for the next few months, or you have this crisis going on, let's get you some things, and then you're back to normal life, back to work, back to family, back to everything else. But there's medical problems that are just chronic. My pain's never going away. I always hear
Yeah.
it. I'm never going to not be sad. And when you don't have a solid handoff there to help them address those things, then all of a sudden you need 4 appointments. How are you gonna even logistically get all that done when you're in a crisis?
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
And-
Because when you're in a crisis, your brain's going all over the place. You can't focus on what needs to be done.
Right, and Rob's a great guy. And I'm sure he loves having the support of an expert medical opinion directly after to help him support what he's doing for patients. Right? Like this is it just directly ties into, we're going to help you in practical ways and get you stable so you can start building your life and finding the options you need to really give you that long-term stability and long-term sobriety that creates a long and happy life.
And it takes the long-term follow-up, it really does. A lot of the recovery community does good work, and they do a lot of good education and short-term work. One of the big failings is, and most of the programs will offer like aftercare programs. Realistically speaking, they have limited attendance rates. That's a nice way of saying people get bored and they stop coming. with the medical, combining the mental health care, the recovery care, and the medical care means we're gonna say, okay, what are your medical needs? Cool, we'll see you in a month. We'll work with it. And then when you do have a problem, we are right here. And you're still meeting us every month, so we're gonna go down the checklist of the things that could be going wrong. We're gonna make sure you're okay. And the long-term follow-up is where we see a lot of that success of just doing the long-term medical care. That makes a huge difference in people's outcomes long-term. Because we hit them when they're in crisis, we get them when they're doing stable, and we're able to just keep people on point.
Yeah. Again, Matt, I really do love what you guys are doing, and that's why I really wanted to get you on the show, because I wanted to give you guys a platform where you could get yourselves out there, and yeah, if you guys are up for it, I would think too here probably down the road, maybe every quarter or something, we have you guys come on. Or every other month or something, come on and we'll pick a subject, and or maybe there's people like Chris that you guys have helped a ton that may want to come on and talk about what their journey and what you guys have done for them.
I know my dad would love to talk to you too. It's his
Yeah.
birthday.
Oh, well, happy birthday, Chuck.
Another thing, he saw all his patients and then took care of business.
I love it.
Some things to do.
To Rob's
Yes.
point, and your point, especially about the brain, I want to share this. Sorry, it's gonna have to put
Okay.
it-
So here, the top, you see the normal functioning brain, right?
Okay.
Then in the middle, you see the addicted brain. All the blue, no yellow, right?
Yeah.
And then you see 6 months, 8 months, a year, and it takes 3 to 5 years to get back here. When are addicts out of programs?
After they detox, we send them out in the blue, right? How can they get better when their brain is still in the blue?
Yeah,
Correct. Good point.
has zero functionality going on. And that's not.
That's why our long-term care,
Yeah,
that's why we continue to see people, so their brains continue to come back, right?
Yeah.
That's what makes the success so great.
Well, the
exactly.
key to the long-term care is it's gotta be routine, it's gotta be something they're gonna be checking in from time to time. And it can't be invasive or time consuming, because we're not here to milk for as much billing as we can. We're not doing, a 2-week residential stay. We're not charging the hospital rates of thousands of dollars a bed to do it. We can follow up with a regular medical visit, and on Medicaid rates, it's no big deal. It's very minor until it's critical. And then all of a sudden it's the most important thing in that person's life right then. And it doesn't, the opportunity to do the work is there. The client population needs the help, and we just will follow up with them from point to point to make sure it happens.
And to follow up with what Chris was saying, I mean, that little visual he showed you. That's from the internal medicine handbook.
Yeah.
Like that's stuff that people know. Like
Yeah, you guys didn't make it up.
Yeah, like Rob learned this in grad school. Like this is people have known this for a really long time, that this is how brain functionality works. And when you're looking at people slowly gaining more and more of that over time, that means they're going to remember different things. If you have a trauma history, you're going to suddenly be there again. If you have other mental health issues, other physical issues, memories, just things coming in, what are you going to do when those things start to hit 3 years after you got sober?
Yeah.
I remember sitting across from patients and talking with them. This happens all the time, where they just suddenly have a crisis of conscience, and they realize that sometimes it's just mourning what could have been, and all of a sudden, when you have your brain healthy and you're able to truly consider those things fully and feel them fully, where do you go to talk about that? Oh, maybe the guys you've been talking to once a month and been fine for the past 2 years.
Yeah.
maybe that's that. You'll mention it and get the support you need to be able to get through that situation.
Well, I know where they can go. They can go to White Tree.
Oh, well, there you go. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
We'd love to have them here. We'd love to take care of them.
Again, guys, we've hit our hour, and I do my best to keep the live shows right at an hour. Our other shows sometimes go like an hour and 15 or hour and a half. It's
Okay.
guys, thank you so much for taking time. And Rob, it was a pleasure meeting you for the first time, and I'm sure we'll get to meet in person someday soon. To wrap this thing up, I'd like each of you to, gosh, what just throw out there what White Tree means to you and helping others. I mean, what does it really mean to you guys to be a part of this great facility and do what you do?
The world.
Okay.
Like, it's like the doc says it all the time. We're not just saving lives, we're saving generations. Right?
Yeah.
Saving one life. You know, my boys watched me go through this. They watched me go through detox. It's outpatient. I got to go to work. I got to go to the comfort of my own home. And I can guarantee you, they might happen, but I don't think they'll be having a problem with addiction when they get older because they got to experience it. They watched me go through it and they talk about it almost every day.
Yeah.
It's amazing. That's
You're-
why I will do anything I can so that people know that this place exists.
You're helping break the links of the chain, Chris.
Because it's different. They solved the problem. Now it's time to get people to know, right?
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Time to link a new chain, a golden chain, right? Get rid of the
Yeah.
rusty one and let's relink a new chain.
Yep.
CL.
For me, I do this for the one, man. I do this for the person I'm gonna help. I do it for that person to get what they need and have access to it when they need it. And it's all about the one. It's all about going in and helping that person reach their maximum potential. That person's life matters. Every single one of them. And if you can't focus on the one and really believe that the one matters, then you'll miss out on some great things. And you'll miss out on understanding how important it is to help the one. It's one of those things that, you know, I wouldn't be here without really good people in my life putting me into the position I'm at. And if I wasn't willing to do whatever I needed to do to work with the government, to work with other providers, to work with a lot of different perspectives and different people, if I wasn't willing to do that, this wouldn't work. It's all about helping the one person get what they need and making sure that their needs are met long term and that they know that they matter.
Love it. I love it. Rob.
Well, I'll start off with that. I'm pretty cynical. I worked in a lot of systems. And the reason why I worked in a lot of systems is because I went from position to position and situation to situation. And in a lot of ways, I've seen a lot of different problems, both systemically and individually. And I ended up working with Dr. Canfield, moving from the psychiatric hospital, in a lot of ways, because I saw this what they were doing as something that was effective, something that worked. And watching that progress for cases, and I mentioned this earlier, I like some of the rougher cases. I like the situations where we see people make major progress from active psychosis to stable jobs and working with their families. I like seeing the people who go from broken families to getting through their DCFS cases, getting through their probation and parole cases. I enjoy watching people who have gone through major critical problems find stability and a sense of peace. Those are my favorite cases. I like seeing that positive progress. And coming in and working with White Tree has been a resoundingly positive experience. And since the beginning of my career, with the exception of the first psychiatric hospital I worked at, I've never stayed at a job longer than 2 years. And that transience wasn't from problems. It was because I moved from situation to situation to situation, looking for a place to land, looking for somewhere where I could see that kind of progress and that positivity, and working with people I can trust. There's a lot of great people out there doing good work, and there's a lot of sharks. And I have stuck with this organization now for a little over 5 years, specifically because I trust the people I'm around. And I get to see a lot of positive progress from people that are here. And that's why you do this kind of work. Is you do it to see that positive progress, not positive gain.
I thought it was Chris taking you daily foot rubs.
Oh, heck, if that's happening, man, I'll make an appointment.
We do not make our clients.
We do not.
Just to clarify.
Right. We'll cancel that one out. Well, guys, all three of you guys are looking at it all really the same way. Y'all had kind of different responses to it, but the one response that was the same was the people. It's the people that you care about, right? I mean, all three of you said, I mean, Chris said the world, and yeah, to go out there and to give a place for individuals to go to for help anytime that they need it, not booting them out the door because life happened to them, is so huge. And for people to know that they've got somebody to back them that's going to be there to help them it's an amazing thing, right? I mean, I can imagine you guys are probably on cloud 9 all the time, just because, like what Rob was saying, you see this progress, right? You see this change. What an amazing thing to be a part of.
You know, I was working, and another one of our providers the other day had a patient that was just screaming at him, just upset over an issue. And they walked out, and I looked at that provider and I said, you know, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to, you know, they were pretty aggressive. How do you want me to handle the situation? And they just looked at me and said, everybody gets a second chance. Everybody gets a chance.
Yeah.
You know, everybody matters. That's everybody that works here. That's what they know. It's what they feel. And Rob would have not put up with me for this long if we weren't trying to do good things there. You know, it's about that. It's what it is. Everybody gets a chance.
I love it. And you guys can see the heart, right? I mean, definitely I can see the heart. You know, I had the privilege of sitting down and having a meeting with Chris today and some other individuals, and I saw so much love and care and passion come from Chris, which I saw before when I was in there visiting you guys, but to see him work, not explaining things to me, to explain things to someone else. I mean, he was wearing his heart on his sleeve, man. That's what it was all about, right? He wasn't, I've seen individuals like this before on the opposite side, and they're selling their business, right? They're selling it. And that was not Chris. Chris was showing the love. He wasn't selling White Tree. He was saying, look, we're selling love over here. We're selling care. We're selling help. You want to be a part of it, man. You know, this is what we're about. And to me, that's so huge. That is so huge. And yeah.
You guys
What's that, Chris?
teaching me that. It's because of these guys. They're the ones teaching me that.
Yeah.
They're the ones getting my brain back. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The whole thing. It's not just one of us.
Well, yeah. It takes again, it's the connection, right? It takes the connection. Yeah.
Oh, dude, we just handed you a walking stick.
Yeah. a golden one. Guys, again, thank you so much for taking time out of your evening and for coming on and sharing with our listeners a little bit more about White Tree and yeah, Chris and I mean, we gotta connect. There's some things you and I need to talk about, and we'll make some stuff happen. And I'd love to plan a time here again down the road to have Dr. Chuck come on and talk about what he wants to talk about, you know, to see if we can help you guys get out there a little bit more. And I'm a firm believer that when you run across really, really good things and really, really good people, man, we're all in this together, right? We're all out there to help one another. It's not a competition. It's how many people can we help? And you know, we can change the world one person at a time. We're not going to do it all 100% at a time, just like the addiction doesn't happen overnight. And if we all stick together and we all keep pushing, things are going to happen. And just in the 2 years, a little over 2 years I've been in the recovery community. Sorry, you guys can probably hear my wife's TV in the background. I don't know if you can hear it or not. It's really loud for me on this side.
Yeah, through COVID, we're all used to.
Good. It's
It's-
yeah, when you run into good people, you know, and we all stick together, just in the 2 years or a little over 2 years I've been in the recovery community, I've already started seeing some change, just little teeny ones, and it is so amazing to see. And one day, man, we're gonna be tugging on that rope to open up the curtains, and they're gonna open up real quick.
Oh, yeah.
Right now it's a little slow, which is okay. It's part of the process. However, if we continue to keep pulling and keep moving forward, good things are going to happen.
You said it. When this is something that affects 1 out of every 3 people. All the time. Yeah, eventually we'll all talk about it.
Yeah, right. Well, guys, again, before we sign off, how can people find you? Where can they go?
They can go to our website, www.whitetreemedical.com. The fastest way, if you have questions or need some help, call the office number. It's 801-877-0705. And we'll be more than happy to get you schedule an appointment, help you know what we need, talk to you about our options, what we can do for you. But those are the 2 best ways is to do that. So
Okay. Well, thank you so much. And I'm going to give you guys a plug before we sign off. My wife was having some struggles a couple of weeks ago. I don't know, 2-3 weeks ago. And I gave her Chris's number. And guys, thank you. Chris, thank you. And to all your whole team, you guys really helped her out. You guys made a huge difference for her. And just very blessed and very grateful to have you guys in my life right now. So thank you to all our sponsors, to all our listeners, Resilience Talk Network, man. Just thank you to all our supporters. We love and appreciate you. And I usually use this saying at the end of our recording shows, but I believe I'm going to start using it just on every show. Remember, addiction is giving up everything for one thing, and recovery is giving up one thing for everything. We're out.